All right, well, let's get started. I'm Todd Geist, Geist Interactive. We're an FBA Platinum partner, and I'm the founder of the company. And I was on the FBAC, a founding member of the FileMaker Business Alliance Council. I've been doing this for a while, since the mid '90s. This, I think, is my 20th DevCon or something like that. So it's been quite a ride. You can reach me on Twitter. That's the easiest way to find me, or of course through our website, geistinteractive.com. You can reach us there as well. So this is a journey. I think I didn't realize sort of how appropriate this slide would be when I put it up here. We're definitely on a journey. I mean, it's pretty impressive what we're seeing over this couple of days, isn't it? I mean, the amount of innovation, the amount of effort it took to put together a big giant rebranding like this, the new products, the one launching as early as next year, first quarter, and the changes that are coming to the FileMaker platform. I'm going to get this all mixed up. I'm going to forget when to say FileMaker and when to say Clara, so you'll have to forgive me. But I think it's important to note that the changes that we're seeing here now, that are just like right in our face and happening and so exciting and new, are happening across the entire internet ecosystem. It's just been. It is a ride that is going faster and faster and picking up speed and changing direction sometimes, and new things are invented. And it's taken me a long time to appreciate some of the business and economic forces that drive the ways in which things are done in the space that I've been in since the '90s, which is essentially workplace innovation. That's what I've always been doing, and that's why I was so thrilled when FileMaker chose that as the platform name, as their category name. But I've always been, basically an engineer at heart and just really enjoy the technical stuff. But over the last few years, I have been, as my company has gotten bigger, and we were talking to more and more customers, I've noticed some things that are really new and different. And they're really related to business more than they are to the technology. The technology obviously is there, and it underlies a lot of the business things that are happening. But I think the business part of how software gets made is important. And so I've been on this journey, and this is why this is my first business track presentation. I think I've given 30 DevCon talks and a couple Macworld talks back when there still was a Macworld, but I've never talked at the business track. So you'll have to forgive me if I don't have business speak and all those things, but this should be interesting, and we're definitely on a journey. That's pretty clear. So let's start about what's the same. So as I was saying, I got started doing workplace innovation, business automation, whatever you want to give that name to, but it was basically in 25 years ago. The organizations that I was working with had data separated amongst various pieces of paper, filing cabinets, maybe some spreadsheets, that kind of thing. But data is spread out, right? That is still a problem today. In fact, it's worse in many ways. We just don't have paper. Maybe paper's not as big an issue. There still are businesses that are migrating from paper, but that's certainly not where you see the big chunk of businesses these days. They've moved a lot of their stuff into the digital world, but it's not consolidated, right? I mean, when I started, the dream was, let's get all our data into one place. What I don't think anybody anticipated is the amount of data that we now are interested in, and companies are interested in, is so massive that one place doesn't make sense, except if you think that the cloud is being the one place, right? So we still have the same core problem. What's changed? So the economic forces unleashed by the internet really favor new approaches. And this isn't really news, maybe, to many of you, but it's been clear. We've seen wave after wave of disruptive technology make its way through industries and change everything, right? I mean, we've seen companies that were leading in their various industries all but vanish. I think of like BlackBerries, You know, I mean, they were everywhere until the iPhone came along and just, you know, gone now. And this has happened again and again and again and again since the internet came online. And I think it's important to point out in my journey, I started before there was an internet doing this stuff. My first connection to something other than my own computer was a 2600 baud modem connected to the university I was working at, way before even CompUSA and Prodigy and those kind of things. So that's where I started. Local area networks, 2600 baud modems. It was so awesome. I got 5200. It was like amazing. And you know, the screeching sound of that modem connected was like, oh, so great. So you know, so we're in a very different environment, right, from back then. But I want to anchor this in some optimism, and I think this is real and true, and I feel this kind of deep in the core of my bones right now, that every company on the planet has this problem that I just described. This data is separated all over the place. It's so much of it, they don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to move it from place to place. And every company has a set of problems that you have the skill sets to solve. And so I'm going to dive into some of what those details are, but I do believe that even if you take away Claris Connect as what's coming in the next few months, the current technology that we have today, the FileMaker platform, has a core set of features and functionality that make it really good at solving that core problem I described, even today, even with the way in which it's different. And I think that's actually pretty amazing. And that's really, to me, what workplace innovation is all about. And FileMaker has these features that just make it good at doing the problems that I'm going to be talking about. I mean, you're all familiar with the use cases that you've been using to build your custom applications and your workflows for your business. I'm going to bend that a little bit towards where I see the big problems are and where they manifest themselves for, like I said, every business on the planet. But the awesome thing is that the core feature set that FileMaker brings to the table is actually really good at solving these problems. So there's a huge opportunity here. But we really do have to think about what happened and why these changes are happening. Like what is driving the underlying innovation that we're seeing? Because if we don't have at least some kind of basic grip on that, I think we'll make decisions based on a world that was at least 5 or 10 years old now, and with the pace of change that's happening, doing that, well, you know, I think you can imagine the outcomes there. So I'm going to focus on 3 things. Like I said, there's many things that have happened, but I think there's 3 core things that are really just shaking up this whole space, and have been for quite some time. And I think now we're all seeing it. It's like we're all right there, whether it's here at this conference or whether it's in discussions with the companies we work for, our clients. The first one is cloud infrastructure. The second one is SaaS applications. And the final one is the API economy. So I got involved, as I started getting my business to a certain size and having more business responsibility than engineering responsibility, I started reaching out to people in my community who run companies and are responsible for the technology buys, right? If these are the people that I want to sell to, I need to understand what their problems are. So I teamed up with a public relations firm, and we did these what we call CIO, CTO forums. And it's a great format. I would recommend that in your own area you should try this out. What we did is we invited, we got a list of local CIOs and CTOs, and I live in an area where there's actually a lot of big business. I live in Southern California in a town called Thousand Oaks, Newbury Park. Amgen's headquarters there, Dole's headquartered there, the LA Rams are headquartered there. A lot of business. It's just out of LA, it's just over the mountains from Malibu, so there's a ton of business, a ton of investment. And so we had a nice pool of CIOs and CTOs from various size companies that we could talk to, from 10 million to 4 billion in revenue. And a couple things that shocked me about the conversation as I was having with them. And one thing I should say is that as part of this thing, I got to be the moderator at these events. So we would invite the CIOs, we'd pick 4 to be kind of the featured speakers, and I would be able to ask them questions, and we'd have a Q&A about it. And it was really great. I wasn't there selling, I was there listening. I was asking questions, just listening to what they would say about the business problems they were having. And so I asked the guy who is responsible for that $4 billion in revenue. He has a team of 350 DevOps and software engineers on his team. They have, I don't know how many thousand employees, and they are in the financial sector. They do loans. And I said to him, where's your data center? You must have a data center. You're in financial services. It's highly sensitive data. You have this huge team. Are you in LA? Yeah, because there's a big data center in LA. Are you using LA's data center? What is it? He just laughed. No, we're in Amazon. Amazon is cheaper, faster, and less risky than I could ever hope to be. And that was the first time I'd heard that from somebody who actually, what I thought of, had a good reason to not be in the cloud and the resources to not be in the cloud. And yet his decision was crystal clear as far as he was concerned. There was no way that he could do it better than Google or Amazon. They particularly were using Amazon. So at that point, I really sort of, the message came home that, I mean, I knew the cloud was kind of where things were going, but I really assumed that there were good reasons for companies to avoid going there. And I'm sure there still are some companies that are avoiding going there, and some of them have good reasons. But what I learned from this thing is that cloud infrastructure is so cheap and so much more secure than most companies can do that the economics incentives will drive these companies there over time. And it's not a question of, once the cost drops low enough, it doesn't actually matter if it's not as good now. If it's cheap enough, you make up for it. You figure out other ways to deal with, I don't get that feature. Well, if it's 10 times less expensive, guess what? You find another way to fill that feature in. And this is, if you've ever seen any videos or read any books by Christian Clayton, who wrote The Innovator's Dilemma, he goes through this process and talks about how this happens. When a technology change comes along like this, the economic forces that get unleashed will drive from the bottom up. Companies will just continue to move towards that technology because it's cheaper. Even if it's not as good at first, it eventually gets as good or better, but it's always cheaper. And if it's cheap enough, there's no way for you to remain competitive unless you do that. So the impact of SaaS software. So building on top of cheaper cloud infrastructure, SaaS companies get to come along and build software on top of this, and their costs are lower. And they're lower by a significant amount. And we heard lots in the keynotes about Claris being cloud first, but not cloud only. But it's quite clear that they are seeing this as well. That there's the economic forces. It's just cheaper to be there. You need to be there if you want to be competitive. That's where the innovation is happening, because it's so much cheaper. You can be more agile. You can use more resources. All of those things just compound. So a few years ago, I used to say. It's a little embarrassing. I used to say, SaaS software is the fast food of software, right? It's cheap, maybe it tastes okay, but if you live on it, it will kill you. That was my thing, right? But I have to, if you go and take a look, just go and try out some of these platforms that are out there. You'll find they're getting quite good, and the reason they're getting quite good is because their costs are so low that they can invest more in product development, and they do. So I used to think of, another way I sort of didn't understand this was, I used to think of their free tiers. They call it freemium, right? Get the customers on, eventually they buy, and that's the reason you do this freemium model. But there's actually another reason that's really important that comes from being built on SaaS software. A customer getting on your SaaS software application costs you almost nothing. There's zero cost to you to have another customer on that platform. There's a benefit even if they don't pay, because they're using your system. And they know exactly how those customers are using their system. They know every mouse click. They know every screen they're using. They know how long they're staying on those screens. They know what features the customers are using. They know what features the customers aren't. So they're getting tons of feedback about the application. So they are basically, it's not that they're giving away free services. They're trading services for QA and and the ability to just watch users use their software. This is kind of a new concept to me, but it's absolutely true that they get this. So they're getting good and they're setting really high expectations, right? So this starts on top of cloud. Cloud is cheap. These software applications that build the services that we want, that we use, are able to leverage that to make pretty good products at a pretty good price, right? So this is happening. I think you're all aware of it. This was not the case when I was starting. There was not SaaS software, and I think it started with maybe Salesforce in a big way in the late 2000s, but now it's everywhere. There's literally, in any category you pick, there are dozens and dozens of pretty good SaaS applications that are sort of these. They're not verticals, they're not niche-y, they're somewhat general, right? But whatever they're doing a good job, and they're getting better. And setting high expectations. So the final thing is that I want to focus on here is the API economy. It's a buzzword that gets thrown around, but I think the two words are important. It's the API and the economy. So API is application programming interface, as you're well aware. What it changed in the last few years is that all of these SaaS applications essentially settled on a single base standard of how they're going to communicate. They settled on JSON, and they settled on OAuth, and a few other variations of pushing data over HTTP. So what this meant is that all these applications could now talk to each other, and we saw new product categories like iPaaS, which we now have as part of the family here with Claris Connect. But these platforms that focused on simply linking up these applications, right? That was their whole focus. So what happens when you get this? When you have all these applications that are focused on product development, focused on customers, and they're able to talk to each other, they are improving each other because one application can focus only on time tracking, and they can say, we work with Basecamp, Asana, take your pick, project management, whatever tool. They don't have to focus on that. They focus on time management, right? So as all these apps improve, they improve the whole internet, the whole suite of services and applications that are out there. And this is just a self-fulfilling prophecy. It just keeps getting better. As they improve the network. As the network improves, they improve. Okay, so this is what I mean by the economic forces that have been unleashed into the marketplace, and it's hard for humans, I think, to understand the network effect because it's usually described as being exponential. It's not linear, right? I think the official definition of the network effect is the value of the network goes up by the square of its participants, right? So not linear. It's a square root. So it's going. I guess it's not exponential, but it's a square. So today, most companies use 6 to 12 applications that they're buying as services from some vendor out there. You can find numbers all over the map for this, but this is, I think, a pretty good number from my talk with CIOs and CTOs. We use 8 in our company, so I think this is about right. Again, you can debate what these numbers are, but they're real, they're out there, and I would have told you a few years ago that they were being stupid to do this. This was not a good move, but honestly, they're right. I mean, to make these decisions, they're making them because they are working, and they are working in business environments. There are economic forces driving the cost of these things down, and the products are getting better and better. So they're not being stupid. So this has changed my approach quite a bit when it comes to sales, because a few years ago, my approach would have been to go into a customer and try to replace those SaaS apps. We still do that in some cases, but I don't automatically consider that they made a wrong decision by choosing something, whether it's Salesforce, Basecamp, Harvest, take your pick, HubSpot, whatever. I don't automatically assume that was a bad move. It might have been a very good move. And so we have to change how we think about dealing with that environment. All right, so what time is it here? 20 after. All right, I'm going to keep going. I was going to stop and take questions, but I think I'll move forward a little bit further. So I want to express this in another way. So this is a little bit of a visual run we're going to do through this. I like to be I'm a visual thinker. I still see the relationship graph as a three-dimensional layout of table occurrences connected by relationships. So I like to think this way, and I hope this is useful to you. But on the series of slides that I'm going to show, things that are blue are the things that we make custom, okay? So these are the custom apps that are unique to the businesses that we are either working for or serving who are our clients. And so when I started, this was often building an awful lot because there just wasn't business software. I mean, you had QuickBooks Desktop, you had a few Peachtree, you had a few accounting solutions, but you certainly didn't have a lot of small business software. So you built it. But even back then, we used to do some integration. I don't know if there was some amazing stuff back in the 90s with Adobe Illustrator. People were doing full magazine layouts based in FileMaker. They would have all the data for all the articles and all the photos and assets that would go into producing print media, even magazines. And they would automate Illustrator with AppleScript and FileMaker. And this was, I think some of these companies did quite well. So there was even some integration back then, and we certainly were sending email through the internet, so that was happening, but we were still very focused on the LAN, right? We were still local area network. The internet was not a big thing yet, but that's what it was like. A little bit later, we're still building, but now we get plugins. If you're building with FileMaker, we get plugins, we get the connections to the web, and we get connections to SQL databases through ODBC and through some of those early plugins. And so we get the ability to start integrating with more things. But we're still, because we don't really have a rich internet ecosystem yet, we are still building a big, giant blue piece here. Before I go any further, does everybody get the graphics that I'm talking about here? Blue build, green is buy, right? Blue build, green buy, right? But the internet economy kicks in, the API economy kicks in, and things start to look a little bit more like this, right? So now, we have companies that are using a bunch of apps, and they probably still have some custom applications. These custom applications are, in some ways, even more valuable to those companies because they are not dealing with sending email. How many people can remember back to, there were a few products for doing email campaigns in FileMaker probably in the mid-2000s. This was back before the email host would blacklist you immediately if you blasted out emails. Before spam was a big deal. But there used to be products in the FileMaker space for doing email campaigns. Email campaigns was a big deal in the early days of FileMaker. It was a great way to do it. But you couldn't do it today at any scale because of the difficulties with spam and blacklisting and all that stuff. You're going to have to use MailChimp, right? I mean, or SendGrid with Twilio or one of the other providers. Digital signing wasn't a thing. We didn't have it. Now we have things like DocuSign. We have Basecamp for project management. We have all these things out there that have APIs, so these things can be connected together. We can have our customer list in a custom database that we're building and have it sync with MailChimp, right? But before I go on, let me ask a question. So there's something important about email marketing, and there's actually laws around it. You're not allowed to send email to somebody who says, I don't want to send email. I don't want you to send email to you. So where is the source of truth about that fact about a customer? Where is it? In what application is the truth about whether or not you're allowed to send email to somebody? Is it in your custom app or is it in MailChimp? It's in MailChimp, right? Right? So we have a little bit different problem here. We can't have everything consolidated. We can't necessarily think about all of the facts about our system in the same way because there are applications, QuickBooks is another one, where there are rules and regulations that are applied to certain types of data, and that wherever that app is that's maintaining that, that's the source of truth, right? So you have to think about the data that's in your custom app and your FileMaker app as being a reflection, hopefully a recent reflection of what's up there. So This is one, fictional company. This is the network that they have of applications that they use to automate and manage their business. Some other company might have made different choices. Maybe they use Asana for project management, Slack for internal communications, they're still using MailChimp. But they have this big, giant manufacturing application that runs all of their factory floor. Right? That's custom. Nobody else is going to build that for them, but they're using other tools along with that. So this business chooses a different set of applications, and they connect them in different ways. Right? Another business might have another different connection. Right? They're using HubSpot for CRM. Right? They're still using MailChimp, but maybe they use Help Scout for internal help desk or something like that. Right? So every business kind of is putting one of these together. They're kind of creating this constellation here. They're not really thinking about doing it that way. They're just like, oh, we need this app. It's a good app. It works really great. Our people love it. Our customers love it. So yeah, we're going to use it. It's a good investment. What happens when you start this? When you start building a system like this, where you start integrating these things, you get subject to the network effect, which is awesome, because the network effect is going to funnel free or cheap value to you on a regular basis. When QuickBooks ships a new update, when they ship new features, you get those for the same $60 a month that you paid the last month. You didn't have to develop it. You didn't have to spend your own internal resources on that feature. QuickBooks just made their app better, and you get it. All right, so that's that free upgrades thing. Sometimes something in your business changes, you don't need an application. Whether it's custom or something you're buying, you can just throw it out. And that's that no longer needed idea there. And then you're continuing to build on your own custom pieces. And so by connecting into this network, you're adding value and you're getting value back from the network. Does that make sense? You add value, you're getting value back from being connected to the internet. So I think this is the biggest change that I have in the way I'm thinking about things. Every business is building a custom application network. Whether they know it or not, they are doing it, and they are being driven to do it by the economic forces that I talked about, right? So this is not something that you can necessarily go in and say, don't do that, because the economic forces are going to drive this forward. The scale of data, the amount of data that's flowing through these applications is great, and it's not something you're going to corral into one system, right? The features that some of these guys are providing, you're not going to be able to provide, at least not at the same cost, especially when you get into things that deal with stuff like regulation and things like that, or just things that have to do with scale. Like how the bigger they are, the better they are. It's going to be very hard for you to match those things. So every business is building a custom application network. This is happening. I don't think you can really make a case that this isn't happening, and I don't think you can make a case that businesses shouldn't be doing this. I think they're going to do it, and they're doing it because it's the right move. The economic forces are there. The apps that they're choosing for good reason. So this is happening. I don't want my next slide here. So this is the next kind of key thing. So how do you innovate in this environment? Well, you do it by building and maintaining a custom application network. That's it. If your business is automated and your workflow is done through and on top of and throughout this application network, if you're going to innovate in your business, you're going to change these workflows, you're going to change the connections. And so therefore, if they're not exactly the same, I like to make a strong case. If it's, maybe you could say, well, they're tightly coupled, but I'm going to go with they are the same. So business innovation is executed or implemented by designing, building, and maintaining this network. So this is an example of sort of our custom application network. We have some custom stuff. Our Zeitgeist is our billing system. A LedgerLink is a product that we have that connects to QuickBooks, and so we use that as our conduit to QuickBooks. We have a couple of connectors that pull information from our web store and from our CRM, and feed data into those kind of things. So this is actually pretty close to what we have, and I love it when QuickBooks ships a new feature. It's just awesome, and Autopilot's been doing great stuff lately with some of our marketing things. It's just really great. So let me pause right here, and let me just, is there anybody here out there who's just like, you're totally nuts? Or is this resonating? Maybe, show of hands. Do you think this is happening? Like, I can't actually see, so I should, yeah. So I'm only seeing about half people go, yes, this is happening. Like, you're on the right track. So are the rest of you like, no, you're nuts? You can say that, because it could be true.
Well, I think it's the wrong question, Todd. I mean, it is happening.
Yeah.
Right? The question is it the right thing happening at the right time? I really like your hybrid approach here of where you can add value.
Yeah.
But the example that was given this morning, right, the web is coming, but the industry is losing, that was cited in the example, is losing $1 billion a quarter because of their investment in this software, this kind of software.
You mean this investment in this kind of network building software? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying using software as a service
Yeah.
with web as the
Yeah.
pillar,
Yeah.
the internet
Yeah.
as the pillar.
Yeah.
Losing money hand over fist. So what are your thoughts?
So my thoughts are that there are a lot of smart people making a lot of smart investments, and that they're not going to lose money hand over fist forever. And there are companies out there that are making good money and continue to make money, especially some of the ones that have been around for maybe a little bit longer and are way past the investment cycle, the VC cycle. And I think, again, it's anchored in. I think the thing that was new for me is that when the costs are as low as they are for building on the cloud, you can experiment in a lot of ways. And sometimes that means spending a lot of money, right, to get to the next thing. Amazon lost money for a decade at least before they started making money, but they understood that the scale that they were going to be able to achieve was going to make it impossible for them to lose money forever. And now they make plenty of money. So that'd be my short answer, but it's a reasonable opinion. All the trends that I see aren't going that way. The trends that I see are more of this, not less. And you see the investment in integration platforms as a service is growing. This is I think the predictions are a $2 billion industry very soon, if not already. So I think this is happening. I think it's not just economics. It's also things like, one of the things I love about our application here is that the data that actually will get me in the most trouble is the most protected, and it's not my responsibility, which is my accounting data, right? So that's in QuickBooks. It's well protected. I can produce the financial reports and file my taxes and do the payroll things I need to do, and it's not my responsibility to deal with that, right? So that makes me feel really good that it's not something that I have to deal with. And I can concentrate more on the pieces that are important to me, which is exactly how I execute on our projects and bill our customers. And so I think when I talked about custom application network, another way to think about what I'm saying here is that the opportunity for custom is not just in an application, but in the application network. And every business has this problem today. They all have data spread out over all these systems. They really like the services that they're getting, and I don't think they're just going to stop and say, let's pull it all back together into one thing that we're now responsible for. I don't see that. The extent to which people build, how many services they use and how much they build is going to differ for every business. But I like this. This to me this kind of approach makes the most sense for where we are. That we're still doing custom, but we're not trying to replace applications that are doing a really good job for our customers, and instead we're integrating with them. So we're deriving value from our connection to them. Anybody else have a comment on that? If you could use the microphone, that would be great.
Todd, I'm with you on this. I do this all the time. My biggest pain point is when one of these services dies.
Yeah.
I have to go redevelop all that stuff, and I just pissed off my entire
Yeah.
user base, and they think I'm the loser who broke it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the biggest risk here.
Yeah. It's definitely a risk. I mean, I think everybody heard the question. So what happens when one of these services dies? It happens, right? And that's part of the decision that a company has to make is who they bet on for these things. But on the other hand, if you've done integration, right? If you've done integration with one product in that category, you can do that same integration with another product in that category. So you can switch, which is another nice thing. So I would say to that. Yeah, go ahead.
So from a business standpoint, I completely agree with this. Like you said, QuickBooks is a subject matter expert on accounting. None of us are going to be able to write a custom solution that competes. But for years, we're talking about interface and consistency and things like that. At what stage are you separating the business of the software or trying to maybe create custom front ends and single panes of glass and dashboards of...
Yeah, good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, maybe I've laid this on as a bunch of bad news. I don't see it as bad news, actually. I see it as a tremendous opportunity because I think dashboards are a great example. Reporting is a great example. You've got data in all these different apps, but you still need a unified view of a customer, of a manufacturing process, of whatever it is, right? So it's not like companies aren't going to need custom software. They just aren't going to need you to build HubSpot or QuickBooks. They're going to want to build you the dashboard or the connector that ties those two things together. They're going to want you to add value on top of that instead of trying to replace that. Make sense? Anybody else? Throw the objections. Those are the fun ones.
Todd, I work with federal government, and if this was a map of a federal government architecture, all those blue lines are spreadsheets. So they get data from one system to the other, but it's through spreadsheets. So my problem is consuming those spreadsheets in FileMaker, reformatting them, and then being the link between the two, because they're very afraid of the cloud. You know, they don't want their blue boxes in a cloud unless it's the Gov cloud.
I think the government is a special case, but isn't it always, right? I mean, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, there's other constraints. There are businesses and industries which will move slower to the cloud. You know, we had just had this big thing with I think it was the CIA with a $10 billion contract that's with Amazon. That's not to build an on-prem data center, right? It's to build a cloud data center for the government. So they're looking at this. It's happening. Of course, these things are going to take longer. The one APIs that I've worked with recently that are not JSON are tax APIs for the federal government, and they are SOAP and IRS, old school, but secure. The government knows how to make them work and make them run, and they'll be that way for a while. So there's always exceptions to the rule, and I'm not here to say like everybody's going to do this overnight. It's not how this works. It's a phase. There's a phasing that happens, and things. Each industry, each business is going to move at its own pace, but the overall trend is in this direction. And I don't want you to see this as less opportunity. I want you to see it as more opportunity because I honestly believe that it is. I believe that you now can go to any company and talk about the data that they have in other applications and that you can do integrations with those applications. And you can build on top of those applications. You don't have to replace them. You can build on top of them. And that, to me, is a huge opportunity. I think it's as big or bigger than anything we've ever had in this platform because every business has this problem to some degree or another. Stephen.
Comments about, you talked about product improvement through click monitoring, which sends chills up the spines of a bunch of customers. And recently having 2 credit cards that had 100 million credit card applications stolen.
Yeah.
Any comments on that?
Yeah, it scares me, and I did move off of Google, all of my stuff, because I was uncomfortable with their level of monitoring. I do think, I mean, from a privacy standpoint, there's a lot to be worked out here. From an economic standpoint, it's pretty clear, in this country anyway, doesn't seem to even slow things down. I mean, other countries are acting in different ways and putting up regulations, and I think that eventually we will here as well. We'll get data privacy laws. California's adding one in 2020 that's similar to the GDPR, and California's 7th largest economy, I think, or 5th, I don't know. So it's going to drive some changes. But I see these things as another reason why these services are getting better and better, because being GDPR compliant is actually a challenge, and these services will be able to do it, because they'll have to, and they'll have the resources to do it. So I have this personal discussion with myself all the time. I think the surveillance economy, which is the other way to phrase all this, is a pretty scary thing. But in this case, what they're talking about here, they're not selling you off to, at least within the case that I cited, they're not selling you off to ad networks to send you ads. They're using it to improve their product, which many apps ask you to do that you install on the desktop. So it's similar to that, I would say. It's just much easier for them to do it there, so they derive a lot of benefit from it. Yeah, they get analytics on everything you do. And again, maybe some of them are selling it off, but I think their primary reason is to understand how to make better products. We make products. I would love to know what every one of my customers does, not because I want to sell their data, but because I want to make my products better. And I think most people who make software would love to be able to actually see what all of their users are doing and be able to derive some benefit from that. And it's just easier to do if you're cloud native. All right, any further questions on that comment? These are an hour? I totally forget. We're an hour? Is that right? Okay.
I have a question about
yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't see one.
question about the sort of the flow of money here. I'm kind of trying to think about it from that point of view. So, trying to figure out where do you think the money is going to flow from and to? Like I know probably the green spots probably, I assume, you think they're going to be subscriptions, or is it going to be based on data, or how much data you keep there, or where do you think the sort of the business model is going to be that's going to keep this going?
So I think it's a combination of models. I'm actually going to show a couple slides at the end on that. Okay. But I think there's several different opportunities here, and you can decide which one is most appealing or is best for your business. I do think that the custom integration and the custom applications that you're building into this network is a significant value, a significant opportunity, a big one, and one for which you all have the skills to do. Does everybody believe me when I say that? I mean, you have the skills right now to do this, to create this map. So most of you don't believe that you have these skills. Anybody want to tell me why you don't think you do? Because you haven't connected to anything yet? Is that a fair statement?
The connections are definitely an issue.
Because the connections are an issue, yeah?
Knowing what's out there, you have to broaden.
You do, right, yeah. So what's out there, what do I connect with? Lots of times we listen to our customers, what are they using, and then try to figure that out. So connections are a challenge. How many people have actually connected to an API? So yeah, most of you have. How many people have used JSON even internally in your own applications? Yeah, a lot of you have. So those are the core skills you need, right there. That's it. If you can connect to an API or get an API connector from some marketplace, I mean, I got like that LedgerLink thing right there, that will provide you with a full local cache of your QuickBooks data in your FileMaker as just on the data tables on the relationship graph. We charge you $500 a year for that. That will let you write regular FileMaker scripts to update data inside of QuickBooks. We're not the only ones doing this, and I expect this kind of thing to grow. So my main point is that FileMaker itself as a platform has the ability to connect to almost all the APIs natively, no plugins required anymore. Older ones, XML and SOAP, you might have some issues, but you have this ability. You have the core skill set to do this. You may not have thought about how to do this yet, but the core skill set you already have. So I hope you see that as a positive opportunity, because I truly believe that it is. I'm not just up here saying that. I believe that this is a big opportunity. I believe it's going to require us to rethink about how we approach planning the software projects that we do and the kinds of the actual strategies that we do. But you have the skills to do this. I promise you do. There's lots of training out there on it if you haven't done this stuff yet. There's tools like Generator, which is a code generation tool that we put out to help you connect to APIs. And this stuff's only going to improve. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in my talk tomorrow, about some of the things that are coming either from us or from other people or the platform itself about how some of these things will improve. So more questions?
Yeah, one of the things missing is, I think, sort of a catalog of, say, for example, email programs, things like that.
Yeah.
Type, so everybody kind of, you ask your customers what they're using,
Yeah.
and so you have a sort of sense of what they're using, but there doesn't seem to be a place to go unless if you don't have a lot of customers, or if you have one customer, whatever. You're only going to get one.
So I'll tell you how I figured that out. It's a good question. How do you know what's out there, right? So there are two ways that I use to discover this. One is you start with any app you're on, right? Let's say QuickBooks.
Okay.
And then you go to the QuickBooks App Store, and you look at all the things that it connects to. And then you find, oh, that's interesting. Well, let me go to that one. And then you look at their integrations, and you find all the things that it integrates with.
Okay.
Or you can also go to one of these iPaaS services like say, Zapier, and you can look at the catalog of 1,000 different applications that they have that you can connect to, and you can divide them up by category and look and see, oh, this is accounting, this is project management, this is time tracking, this is email marketing, this is transactional email. I mean, this stuff exists out there, and you just go and start with an app that interests you and look for the things that it integrates with and just keep going.
Okay.
And you'll find all this stuff. In terms of what we've seen coming, Claris Connect is going to provide, I'm talking about what we have today, right now. You have the technical capability to do this with the FileMaker platform since 16, which is, by the way, I think very shortly going to be the oldest version of supported FileMaker. I think 15 for another couple of months, maybe, but 16 is the when we got all the ability to do all this stuff. As soon as we get Claris Connect online, now one of the big roadblocks, connections, gets way easier, right? So.
Okay, good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
What I found out, I'm like more the poisonous fruit type of guy, and the reason why I have this approach yet, don't know, maybe I'll change my approach, is because what I found out is both, I speak for all of us, we're getting excited when something that grants so much value to an organization gets out, and you get excited and you read what it can do, and you tell your clients, and your clients get excited too, and they search, and all this time we lose to find out what everything does, and shall I use service A or shall I use service B? And I feel like I get lost to all those services, and when, for example, being an accountant myself, like education-wise, a QuickBooks, it's 4 tables. You can, you don't want the risk of what's happening, but why not evaluate what to bring in FileMaker and what you cannot get this value to your client?
You should be doing that. So one of the things, what's the phrase? Tyranny of choice? Is that the phrase, right? So it's a real thing, right? Too many options, so it's paralyzing. Was your first kind of question,
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
But QuickBooks is not 4 tables. My first big gig in FileMaker was building a full GL in FileMaker. I know intimately accounting software. QuickBooks is a lot more than 4 tables. It offers a whole bunch of services on top of it, including things like sending a payment link very easily to get payments. It's payment processing. It's bank reconciliation. It's all of those other things, too, that you just get by being plugged into it. So I think I think you do need to go through that process of, is this the app for us? Can we use this? Should we not use this? That you definitely need to do it. It's part of the process of doing this. But my main point here is, maybe another way to get across what I'm trying to say is that I believe the era of not having applications that you're integrating with is over. You will be integrating with applications. And so what I'm suggesting is lean into that, not away from it. Because I just don't see how we ever get back to the day where we don't have applications to build into and integrate on top of.
Yeah, of course. And also you have to put into consideration that you have to what's the word? Liaison. Mm-hmm. Like you have to liaise for all those guys. So if they're changing their like pricing, their billing model, you have to like communicate with your clients what's changing for all those guys, not only for FileMaker.
So maybe one thing that's different that we're finding is when we go to a customer, they've already made these decisions. Wow. They're already using them. So they're already using them. The question is whether they should continue, and we have that conversation with them. But these are decisions that are made before we get involved. Yeah, we're using HubSpot for CRM. We're using QuickBooks for accounting. We're using MailChimp for email. These are decisions that are already made. So we're not, that's just not a conversation we're having to have with people. I think it could be, and maybe that's part of another opportunity to have in this world is, how do you strategically think about building on top of the infrastructure that's there, right? And I think that's a new thing we're going to have to learn, both in terms of the patterns that we use to develop things and thinking about stuff like source of truth, where is this data real, where is it a reflection or a mirror of it? All of those things are new things that we're going to have to learn. What apps are actually good and we get familiar with and we can really get good at, and what apps aren't, like what things are not as useful. It's a whole new sort of area to learn, but I think businesses are having to learn this. They're doing this. Again, this isn't a question of we're going in there and say, hey, why don't you use this? Like, they're saying, no, we use this, right? We use this, and we actually don't want you to replace it. We kind of like it, but we need a few things. Can you do a few things with it? And our answer is, yeah, we can do that. So, I don't know, does that resonate at all, or is...
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, I got a few more minutes. Let's just keep going with this. This is good. Anybody else? I mean, you feeling like this is useful?
Yes.
Yeah? Good? Worth having? Finish this last few minutes out this way? All right, good. I'll throw some slides up at the very end, but let's keep going.
Hi, Todd. Really quickly about the economic forces. So
Yeah.
we're based in Europe. We're obviously trailing behind the US a bit when it comes to these economic forces sort of manifesting themselves as value within the companies that we work with. So how do you see this? It kind of seems like it's becoming a sort of multiple stage sort of landscape. So where the US, the economics of using HubSpot or Autopilot and other additional services works.
Yeah.
But in other countries that doesn't yet work. So I come from an enterprise background and I'm fully on board with this. I think this gives us the position even of an enterprise architect.
That's right.
When you go into a customer. My only concern with this is, how do I make sure that there's value? So HubSpot CRM for me is very difficult in Greece to go.
It's very difficult what?
To place into a company in Greece, unless it's an enterprise customer, right?
Yeah.
So
do
you have any ideas?
We use their
that?
free tier. Their free tier is pretty darn good. The other thing that you have to be careful with a lot of this stuff is they change a lot, and they add new features and new stuff comes along. So if you haven't looked at it in even 6 months, you might want to see how they've added new features and stuff. Because I looked at HubSpot about a year ago and I was like, this isn't going to do it. Then I come back maybe 3 or 4 months ago and I was like, this is free. This is their free tier. Okay, sign me up, kind of thing. So it definitely, like, this is new. There's no question about it. This is new, and a new way to think about it. But to me, it's more ways to create value in a scenario where more and more things are becoming commodities, right? I mean, that's clear, right? And is that not clear to things that we used to do? And, you know, we made invoicing systems for people in the 80s and 90s. You're going to have a hard time selling somebody on building them an invoice system today, right? These are becoming commodities. So how do we find new ways to add unique value to the businesses that we're working with, right? And so this is one of them. Learn how to do this stuff.
Do you think that this actually also provides us the ability of changing our business model to becoming sort of agile consultants when it comes to these things? Because this changes every 6 months, right? Or every year even. This whole landscape.
Yeah.
You could be putting things in and out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have any experience with, since we got on this train, has it ever slowed down? No. Seriously, I mean, has it ever even blinked? Even with the security issues, we just had, was it Capital One, 100 million people lost their credit card, or their credit card information got out, or whatever it was. Nobody blinked, right? This stuff is not slowing down. We have no evidence to suggest that the brakes are going to come on. It's only going to get faster. So we got to bring a new approach to this, and part of that approach is, this is the landscape we live in. There are dozens of applications that are reasonable candidates. In many cases, the businesses that we work with have already chosen them. So how do we create value in this environment? And what I'm saying is, all of you have been spending a lot of your time building custom applications. Think of it this way. Just try this on for size. Instead of thinking about the custom application, think about a custom application network. Just move it up from the application level to the network level. And all of the same skills that you've been doing all the business analysis. How do you build the features that you're going to build into your custom apps? Maybe that changes into what service are we going to choose to provide this feature that we need? Are we going to choose Stripe? Are we going to choose PayPal for payment processing? Are we going to choose HubSpot? Are we going to choose Insightly or Pipedrive or whatever it is for CRM? What parts are unique? One of the things I would say is there's a part in here, and one of the ways I hear it described, which is kind of interesting, is the order to cash part of a business. Critically important. Business coming in, how quickly can you get it to money? That part tends to be pretty custom. Every business is a little bit unique there. You'll find very generic solutions that are very cheap, and they won't work for a lot of customers. So I think there's a lot of ways to take the skills that we have and the technical capabilities that we have and the skills that we have and move it up out of the application and into the network. Does that resonate? I find that inspiring. I was very excited when I came up with that. Thank you very much. But I was like, wow, man, this is it, right? I mean, why am I limiting myself to thinking about this little application when the world is this huge, huge suite of services and apps that are constantly improving? Don't I want to play in that space? I do. I can tell you right now, that's the space I want to play in. I want to play in the big space.
Thank you.
I think we have time for one more.
Oh, I don't know if I want to be the last question. When I look up here, I see these big green circles and smaller blue things. So is FileMaker still going to be the star of the show?
I wouldn't put that much into it.
Is Claire's Connect
I wasn't
the new star?
being exact on my sizing.
Okay, not to scale.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you see, is FileMaker still going to be the star of the show, or are we more just
That's a question I can't answer.
Does it
really
matter?
Can't. Yeah. I will say this. Let me say this. It's very clear to me that that the investment in the continuing of the FileMaker platform is real, and that is a core piece of what Claris is going to be doing for the foreseeable future. And I'm certainly it's the biggest revenue stream for the foreseeable future. But I have to say that I think the integration platform as a service and the workflow stuff is big. It's huge. It's massive. And so how that plays out has a lot to do with execution. We know what the vision is. We know what the vision is to get there, but, who knows? There's a lot of, we're at the very beginning of this, but I think that opportunity is very large. So when I said I can't answer that, it's because I don't know what that's going to be. But is FileMaker the application a good thing to bet on right now? That's my case is My case is take the skills you have right now and move up from the application to the custom application network. Yes, it's new. The cheese has been moved. It has. Anybody tells you it hasn't, go read the book, and then, you might, it's been moved. And so we need to change. We need to change. And I mean, it could have gone other ways, right? We could have been Quark Express experts or Lotus 123. We could have ended up on a dead end. We didn't. We were with the company. We've been working with a platform that has been viable for 30 years. That is impressive. And what we're seeing right now is, I think, a very credible reboot of not only that core product, but obviously a vision that I think fits with what I've been talking about. I knew a few things. I knew a little bit about Claris Connect, and I knew a little bit about cloud. I'd been on the ETS. I didn't know anything about much of what we saw today. So that's all new to me. And what I'm seeing is a vision, which I came up with this presentation before all that. So it aligns with what I'm thinking, and I'm very happy about that. And I do see this as an opportunity. But I do think we need to change. I do think we need to recognize the ecosystem that we all work within, and it looks more like this than a big giant monolith. I believe I'm out of time. I'm happy to answer questions, at my booth or here while we're changing out. But thank you so much for coming, and I hope you found it valuable. I hope you found it challenging. I hope you at least leave the space open that some of what I'm saying might be worth thinking about. You can decide later that I'm full of garbage. That's fine. But just let it sit. Thank you very much.